Okay, let's jump right in. Back in 2006, Rhonda Byrne released an absolute publishing phenomenon called The Secret. And in this explainer, we're going to peel back the mystical layers of this incredibly famous book and honestly look right at the concrete, fascinating psychological science underneath it all.
Just to put this into perspective, we're talking over 30 million copies sold. It was translated into 50 languages and even spawned a massive documentary film. You have to remember, it arrived at a very specific cultural moment, post 9/11, right before the financial crisis hit, when millions of people were just deeply hungry for a sense of personal agency over their lives. The promise it offered was so simple and intoxicating. Your thoughts literally create your reality.
Now, whether you buy into that premise entirely, partially, or not at all, a cultural phenomenon of this size absolutely forces us to ask some genuinely important questions. Like, does expectation actually shape experience? Why is it that some people consistently seem to attract better outcomes? And what's the actual relationship between our deeply held beliefs, our daily behaviors, and the reality we end up living? These are not trivial questions, and The Secret forced millions of people to finally ask them.
So let's look at Section 1, the core promise, or the law of attraction.
Byrne outlines this brilliantly simple three-step process to manifest your desires: ask, believe, receive. According to the book, the idea that like attracts like isn't just some clever metaphor. It claims it's a literal law of the universe, basically as reliable as gravity. The whole idea is that you've got to decide exactly what you want with absolute clarity, act as if it's already yours, and boom, the universe will deliver it. You attract what you focus on, and you become what you think about the most.
Now, moving on to Section 2, the controversy, and a serious concern. Before we get to the science, we really need to impartially address a significant controversy and some very valid criticisms. Critics raise a serious concern that absolutely deserves our solemn engagement. Does negative thinking attract illness, poverty, or violence? See, the controversy lies in the implication that victims of circumstances genuinely beyond their control have somehow attracted their own suffering through their own negative thoughts. We aren't here to take sides, but it's crucial we acknowledge this very real tension between personal responsibility and external circumstances.
So, while the universe might not literally be rearranging itself to punish or reward you, underneath all that controversy is a core psychological insight that research actually consistently supports, and it's this: what we expect, we tend to find, and what we believe about ourselves, we tend to become. That is the foundational truth we are unpacking today.
Let's dive into Section 3, the psychological science, demystifying the magic.
A perfect example of this in action is the Pygmalion effect. It's a psychological phenomenon where higher expectations directly lead to an increase in performance. Honestly, it's one of the most robust findings in social psychology, often called the self-fulfilling prophecy. In the famous Rosenthal and Jacobson study, teachers were told certain students were about to excel intellectually, completely regardless of their actual baseline ability. And you know what happened? Because the teachers expected them to bloom, those students genuinely outperformed their peers. The expectation changed the behavior, and the behavior changed the outcome. It's not mystical at all. It's entirely psychological.
It's also super interesting to see how confirmation bias plays right into this, through a scarcity mindset versus an abundance mindset. Biologically, we are wired to notice evidence that confirms what we already believe, and we kind of just discount evidence that contradicts it. So a person who believes opportunities are scarce will naturally notice lack, but a person who believes opportunities are abundant, they will consistently notice opportunity. They're both looking at the exact same world, but seeing completely different evidence based on their existing beliefs. So, translated into psychology, the law of attraction is largely just a really good description of confirmation bias operating in the service of positive expectation.
Now let's look at the neuroscience. Deep in your brainstem, there's something called the reticular activating system, or RAS. This is a network of neurons that acts as a vital filter for the massive amount of sensory information we're bombarded with every single moment. This biological filter actually offers a totally compelling explanation for why focused intention seems to attract more of what we focus on. We see this play out every day in what's known as the red car effect. Say you decide to buy a red car. Suddenly, every other vehicle on the highway seems to be a cherry red sedan, right? Well, the world didn't actually change. Your filter did. You told your brain what was important, and it went out and found it. The same thing happens if you decide to look for a new job. Your brain's filter prioritizes that information, making previously invisible opportunities suddenly pop up everywhere.
All right, moving to Section 4, the limits of positivity and Gabriele Audigian's research.
Now, here is a crucial point. While expectation is incredibly powerful, pure positive thinking actually has some pretty dangerous limits. Positive fantasizing actually reduces motivation, whereas obstacle planning drives achievement.
Oettingen found that simply imagining a desired outcome in vivid positive detail without any honest engagement with the hurdles gives the brain a premature sense of achievement. Your brain literally thinks you've already won, so it stops trying. So it turns out that giant vision board of your dream life doesn't work all that well if you never actually leave the couch. It backfires and totally kills your drive.
And this brilliantly brings us to Oettingen's WHOOP technique, which is arguably the missing element of the secret. WHOOP stands for wish, outcome, obstacle, and plan. You start with a meaningful wish and you envision the absolute best outcome. But then, and this is the real game changer, you identify your personal internal obstacle and make a concrete plan to overcome it. The absolute most effective approach combines that positive expectation with a clear-eyed acknowledgement of exactly what stands in your way.
That leads us to our final section, Section 5, Changing Your Reality, a Real-Life Connection.
Let's bring this right down to everyday life. Think about this scenario. Two candidates walk into a job interview facing the exact same questions. The person expecting to fail brings defensive body language, hesitant answers, and makes a pretty poor impression. But the person expecting to succeed? They bring confident responses and leave a genuinely strong impression. They are not experiencing the same interview, even if the room and the interviewer are exactly the same. Their differing expectations completely change their body language and their outcomes. It proves this isn't magic at all. It's just highly effective, observable psychology in action.
The truth is, the life you're living right now is largely the sum of deeply held, often unconscious expectations. These unconscious beliefs shape literally every decision you make, every risk you take or avoid, and every opportunity you recognize or completely miss. And you know, a lot of these beliefs were formed way back in childhood and have been reinforced ever since. Changing your reality isn't as simple as just magically wishing for it, as Byrne might suggest, but it is absolutely possible. And it all starts with simply noticing what you are currently, habitually expecting from the world around you. So, to wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a final, profound question to consider. What do you actually believe is possible for you? Seriously, take a moment to examine the deeply held beliefs quietly shaping your world. What is one belief about your own possibilities that you've held for so long it feels like an absolute fact? And more importantly, what would change today if you finally decided to question it?